The World Is Not Enough was Pierce Brosnan's third Bond film in just 4 years. We want Bond fans to acknowledge its greatness, and we gathered to discuss why we love the film so much. As ever, we want to thank you guys for contributing with your positive thoughts.
It was my first James Bond at the cinema, which is obviously a special moment. My older brothers, as you know, Tom and Matthew, they had got to see GoldenEye at the cinema, and then Tomorrow Never Dies, and as the younger brother, not being old enough, that was hard, and I saw how much they were absolutely buzzing from seeing GoldenEye and then Tomorrow Never Dies at the cinema, and I was just so happy that finally I was going to see a James Bond at the cinema when The World Is Not Enough came out. I was seeing it with Tom and Matt and then a friend or two as well with us, and what an occasion it was. I absolutely loved the fact that I was seeing Bond at the cinema, and I remember really, really enjoying it. Perhaps at the same time as enjoying it, perhaps I was a little bit aware of it didn't feel like it was quite on the heights of GoldenEye. I wanted my first Bond to be like Matt and Tom's GoldenEye experience, and really The World Is Not Enough is different to GoldenEye in that respect. You know, there's no damn jump that's just going to take your breath away in the prologue, as much as the pre-title sequence really, you know, pushes the envelope. There wasn't quite many GoldenEye moments, and it wasn't going to be the same. I mean, the truth is, The World Is Not Enough wasn't coming with the same context that GoldenEye was, so perhaps that made me feel a little bit sad that it wasn't like that. And I remember kind of not being disappointed or anything like that, but I remember thinking that, you know, that was really good. M being imprisoned, like, wow, that's a bit different. And I couldn't perhaps specifically say at that age whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but it felt a bit more low-key than GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies. It felt a bit more grounded, and therefore perhaps it felt a little bit less of a cinema blockbuster event. Because really, for me, The World's Not Enough is not quite that kind of film, even now I think that. But still, I was so happy that I got to see it. I loved it, and I couldn't wait for my next Bond at the cinema. And that's how it was back then. It was a case of loved it, enjoyed it, can't wait to watch it when it comes out to rent on video, and we'll then be looking forward to the next one. That was kind of the routine, wasn't it, for us as Bond fans? Having seen it at the cinema, you'd think about it coming out on video, and then concentrating on what's coming next. And obviously we had Die Another Day, but that's another tangent, not for now. I've always loved the Brosnan period because it was my childhood, and he was the first James Bond I saw at the cinema. With all the hype of GoldenEye, the game, Brosnan in many ways was my childhood Bond. But when it comes to watching them on video, you know, it was Moore and it was Connery and a little bit of Dalton and Lazenby. But Brosnan, you know, I knew and felt that he was James Bond, and I felt his films were good. They were part of the Bond canon. They were very much part of the franchise. But perhaps over the years, as time's gone by, in my head, maybe subconsciously, I always kind of put them in a very 90s bracket. It felt like this was the 90s era of Bond, and it was, obviously, pretty much apart from Die Another Day. This was the 90s era. Pierce Brosnan and the 90s went hand in hand. And part of that is kind of the soundtrack with David Arnold for those three films that him and Brosnan collaborated. And for me, it very much felt like the Brosnan era was a 90s thing. There were good 90s Bond films. But in some small way, I think I felt that just made them not quite as timeless as the rest of the franchise. And so I put them in that bracket, and I kept them in that bracket. I loved them for what they were in that 90s bracket. And that's how I always saw them. But then doing this podcast, exploring all the franchise a bit more and focusing and reviewing on some of the Brosnans, been quite up and down at times. I've started to realise that when it was time for Casino Royale, then I can understand why change was needed. But really, the more and more that time has gone on, I am moving away from seeing them as just a little era in the Bond franchise and just being confined to the 90s. I am loving the Pierce Brosnan films more and more, and I'm seeing that they are worth so much more than that. Perhaps it's the passing of time, and obviously we're getting further and further from the 90s, so the picture is getting bigger. But I don't see them as much anymore, really, as just a little section of the franchise. I feel more and more like they belong in the whole series, and they are becoming more and more timeless, and they all have their value and their role to play. So my appreciation of the Brosnan era, from GoldenEye to Die Another Day, has just massively, massively grown. And there are more and more times when I'm thinking, oh, I want to watch a Bond. I want to watch a Pierce Brosnan one for the escapism, for the development in effects practically, and to some extent some of the, special effects that are used. But also for like many reasons, I've come to really appreciate the Pierce Brosnan period. And obviously there's never been in any doubt him as Bond, really, and how much he loved it, which always helped. And with that in mind, my journey with The World Is Not Enough has grown with it. My appreciation of Brosnan's era and The World Is Not Enough have kind of grown hand in hand. And John on our podcast has always championed The World Is Not Enough. And I think that has encouraged me as well to see it in a slightly different way and perhaps see merits in it that I hadn't seen before. It is more low-key, and the plot is quite tricky at times, but in the same way, Octopussy is, and some other plots are, Living Daylight's a bit harder to follow, but you still go with it. But also I love the ambition of Elektra King as a villain. I think that is a real curveball for the franchise that wasn't even necessary. So for them to do that, I thought that was great story. And she is played so well by Sophie Marceau. And I love, Robert Coltrane. I love the characters that Goldie and John Seru, all those add. And then you're getting little additions like John Cleese. And it's just really growing really nicely, but at the same time keeping under control, really, keeping low key whilst just building and fleshing out the franchise, almost like it was building for a bigger future. Yeah, I think it's excellent. When I watch it, I still perhaps am watching it wincing slightly in the first third. I think the first third resembles quite a lot some of the difficult parts of Die Another Day in terms of dialogue, constant quips, and perhaps the writing of Purvis and Wade just not showing much restraint with the dialogue. It can be a bit silly. I mean, the pre-title sequence alone, before the chase with kind of the exchange with the suitcase and the cigar girl, it's just quip after quip after quip, and that does continue for quite a while. And sometimes when I'm watching it, I become aware of it, which is a bad thing, and that's perhaps a fault of The World Is Not Enough. One of the faults.
Would you like to check my figures?
Oh, I'm sure they're perfectly rounded.
But then, for me, it passes. And then you enter the second third and the final third, and it really is absolutely brilliant where it goes. And I am happy with the deviation from a main villain, and we were all meant to think that Renard was this big boss, this big physical threat. And I know some people kind of criticise the size of Robert Carlyle, but it was all intentional. It was to subvert us and the formula, to make us think that he should have been this, he should have been that, but he isn't. It paves the way for Elektra King to step forward as an incredible villain who really gets under Bond's skin, who really has an impact on him. She is brilliant, and her performance just gets better and better through the film. There are good set pieces, and there's, like the stuff with the tunnel, the pipeline, sorry, how could I call it? It's the pipeline. And the skiing, these are good traditional Bond elements that are really, really enjoyable to watch. It just feels, without being spectacular, without being a blockbuster entry, it feels like a really strong entry that is there for us whenever we want it. There'll always be a time when you feel like, yeah, I'm going to go with The World Is Not Enough, I'm going to throw that on. And I think the stuff in the submarine, the stuff with, when it all builds up to Elektra's death, it's tense. There's some really, really good music from David Arnold. The piano that we also hear in Die Another Day later, there's some real tension in there. Denise Richards' character also is more useful than you think as a character, more functional, and there's more to it than just her being a subsidiary Bond girl to Elektra. The more I watch it, the more I appreciate it, and there are now quite a few occasions when I'm sitting and thinking, oh, I'd love to watch a Bond, and whereas it didn't always used to, The World Is Not Enough is climbing up there. It's one where actually I do want to go and put that on and be in the company of all those characters. I do want to get involved in that plot. I do want to get involved in those locations. I do want to see some action set pieces that are good, but also I do want to maybe just engage with some storylines which are pretty interesting, really. There's just some real quality stuff in there, and it might never be anyone's number one Bond. I'm not saying it's nobody's, I'm sure it is for somebody, but it won't be for many people the number one Bond. But for me, it's rising from the middle. It's rising from the middle to be a little bit something more, something that is special, something that doesn't just belong to the 90s era, something that actually holds a really good place in the franchise and does some really, really interesting things, and is entertaining and is full of it's really fleshed out with lots of great characters who I think are just really stereotypical James Bond characters. They belong in that world of Bond. As each year goes by, here we are on the 25th year of it, as each year goes by, I just become more and more fond of The World Is Not Enough. So I'm so pleased to celebrate its 25th anniversary, and who knows what I'll be saying when we reach its next milestone, because it's just going up and up in my estimation at the moment. Up twine.
Lee Sheward was a stuntman and stunt coordinator in The World Is Not Enough, and even managed to bag a part in the film. You can hear the full interview on our YouTube channel or on our podcast versions.
Vic was no longer the coordinator, he was now directing it, just directing it. He directed Tomorrow Never Dies as well. But no, Simon Kramer's back in the saddle, and Simon was coordinating. And he called up to play a part. There was a couple of us in the missile silo we first got off with. There was other bits. We did the boat chase, although we were passengers in restaurants and driving cars.
Really?
Yeah, so we were in for that. But then Simon called a couple of us, myself and my good friend Paul Heisman. We were the so-called Russian bomb scientists. We were working on a nuclear missile thing, and Piers gets arrested, and then he obviously shoots us and has a gunfight with us, and then escapes, and then...
They're sealing us in. Who are you?
I work for the British government.
No hard feelings, Mr. Bond. But we're even. Soon, you'll feel nothing at all.
We did the whole thing right up to him then jumping on a chain block and whizzing down a corridor as the whole thing explodes. We were there for
yeah. So Bond.
For the safety side of stuff. So I can't remember all these years later how long we were on it. It was about six or 7 weeks we were there. Trying to put that whole sequence together. I don't know where they shot the outside stuff, but yeah, all the inside the silo when they go in and that whole thing again was on the 00. Built the whole silo on there.
How does it work with guns, like shooting guns? Because I think you've got a machine gun, I think, in that scene or something.
Yeah, we did. The armourers on that film, you sort of seen the same armourers and same people the crew sort of bump into. The armour on that, I've worked with many times. A guy called Charlie Bodica. So Charlie was the armour on that. I remember actually with that, the director Michael Apted, who sadly passed away last year.
Yeah.
I remember that they were doing a shot of me trying to reload, and the guns on that were quite fiddly. They were some sort of Russian gun with a plastic magazine. It was all quite fiddly. And I'm not the most dexterous with all that, and certainly not when there's a camera filming you and the director saying, "Do it quicker, do this, do that." So I was fumbling. So I fumbled a couple of passes of me doing that, and then he said, "Oh, we'll go one more." So I had an idea. I said, "Charlie, have you got another gun?" He went, "Yeah." I said, "Give us that." So he gave me the gun. So then I made a little hole in the set which couldn't be seen. I smashed a little. I stuck the gun in there, and then what I did was I fired the machine gun and emptied the magazine, and then quickly sort of put that one down, and then moved it under me coat what was supposed to be, then pulled it up in about 2 seconds. I went, "Oh, that worked." And then emptied the next magazine round, and no one saw me with the two guns switching it. So I don't think it picked up in the edit.
It's worth saying, everyone, that if you haven't listened to the podcast, License to Queer podcast with Tom joins David and chats about somehow you guys have got hold of the scripts. I know you did one with Diamonds Are Forever, which is really interesting about how it could have been a revenge film, of course, at one stage. But the World Is Not Enough episode is fascinating. We don't have time to touch on it all tonight. So do listen to that. It's fascinating. We mentioned, of course, the three credited scriptwriters, aren't there? There's Purvis Wade and Bruce Fierstein. But then there's Dana Stevens, who is Michael Apted's wife, who was involved. Michael Apted, I'm sure, had a hand in it. Pierce Brosnan in shaping the character. So there's an awful lot of things that have got into this. And Chris, I just wanted to turn to you. You're quite a big Michael Apted fan, aren't you? You big fan of him, British director. Did you think it was an unusual choice, maybe, when he was hired?
Yeah, definitely. I think he sort of opened the door for like Sam Mendes. He was seen as, to be honest, at the time, the two things that I knew him from was the 7 Up series, the documentary series, and obviously Gorillas in the Mist were probably his two most famous kind of projects being involved in. But yeah, I was quite surprised because obviously you had Martin Campbell, who had done some quite interesting kind of action, sort of B movie action films prior to that, and then obviously Roger Spottiswoode, who's certainly quite a patchy career as a director, but obviously he's started off as an editor with people like Sam Peckinpah. So again, which makes sense when you watch it actually. But yeah, he was an interesting choice, a bit more, maybe not as highly regarded as some of the directors we've had lately. But again, it was interesting, and obviously you can see, some of the influences he's had on, the film. I think obviously an attempt to sort of add more characterization, maybe ground it a little, and in that way, I was quite struck last time I watched it is how sort of muted some of the action is, in terms of the sound effects, in terms of the way it's edited. It sort of plays a little bit longer when you look at other Bond, or certainly the Bonds that came beforehand. And I wondered if that was, there is that kind of constant struggle, particularly at the time, with a director coming on board, trying to put their stamp on something, and I feel that obviously that was, let's say, really focusing on the story, looking at the character art with Elektra and everything, but then obviously leaving Vic Armstrong in second unit to do the action and having that sort of match essentially. And I can imagine would have been a much slower paced film if it was, and I kind of like that. So it's a strange mix of kind of modern action, but then it has a sort of slow, kind of sort of reminds me a little bit of sort of From Russia with Love in the terms of some of the pacing at times. Just people stood around talking and kind of with the vistas in the background and stuff. But yeah, really interesting choice of director. And I think he did a great job, and it certainly stands out as if not one of the better Brosnan films, certainly one of the better modern day Bond films. And I think that's probably down to Apted's attempt to try to say to ground it, to make it feel a little bit more a little bit more interesting. I think, like I said, the stuff with obviously Electra is its strength, that I think as a film, that if she wasn't in it, the plot at times does get a bit, how many times you can say pipeline, I don't know, but it does get a little bit. Yes. But no, I think he was an interesting choice. For better or worse, like I say, he did open the door for some of the later directors, more sort of highbrow kind of filmmakers that we've had in the past sort of few years. But yeah, I really liked him. It would have been interesting if he did come back and do Die Another Day, because that certainly needed grounding.
Yeah, and then that's the mix, isn't it? The Purvis and Wade needed someone to sort of rein them in a bit more, didn't they?
Yeah.
Clearly for that. He was asked back. That's underrated, I think. But and Tamahora, of course, has said he was responsible for some of the more outlandish things. But anyway, that's another story. Regarding the story, we've got to move on to Electra, because she is one of the. I don't know how people outside the franchise, how casual fans, how well known she is, but to Bond fans, she must be the main characters. Never mind whether she's Bond girl or best Bond girl, best Bond villain. One of the best characters per se. I think outside, the usual people would say would be obviously Tracy and Vesper as the big two, perhaps. But after that, she's got to be up there for me. Even within, sort of casual Bond circles, I think people would remember her performance. And it's a big role. It's an interesting role. And they do tend to get it right for me, the casting. Matt said before, it's good that I think she's not English. I think that adds something a bit different to Tracy, perhaps. Not sort of a classical English, even though she isn't Tracy. But anyway, that's another story. But somebody a bit more perhaps beguiling and mysterious, and far less vulnerable on the surface than Tracy was. She's totally assured, isn't she? She's really, and that's that. She does that so well that men are drawn to that sort of side to her, that they almost want to look after her, even though she's completely independent. And she's such a good character. Is that, Griff, when you were watching it again, did that come across? Her performance. I presume that must have been pretty strong.
Well, totally, and it was really chilling that you assume that Reynard's kind of used her, but obviously she knew to survive, she needs to use him.
Yeah,
she played him, and that's really. She is a fascinating character, probably one of the most fascinating female Bond girls on the surface, and obviously holds a massive grudge that her dad didn't pay the ransom.
Yeah,
and that sticks.
You killed your father.
He killed me. He killed me the day he refused to pay my ransom.
Was this all about the oil?
It is my oil. Mine. And my family's. It runs in my veins, thicker than blood. I'm going to redraw the map. And when I'm through, the whole world will know my name. My grandfather's name, the glory of my people.
No one will believe this meltdown was an accident.
Ha! They will believe. They will all believe. You understand? Nobody can resist me.
Yeah, it's just chilling that she doesn't really. She knows how to get what she wants. She knows how to survive. And you're supposed to feel, at the start of the film, you feel really sorry for her, her backstory. But actually, she's a lot more deeper than that.
What do you think her motivations were? Do you think she was always wanting to take control of her father's pipeline and all that? Or do you think she sort of gradually, was she swayed by the kidnapping experience and this kind of, there's so many facets to it.
Oh, I don't know if she was one of the pipeline or, or or not, but I just feel she's so begrudged about the whole didn't pay the ransom that she just wanted the world that she wanted to take out as many people
Yeah.
as she couldn't get over it. She couldn't get over it, and it's fascinating. At the start of the movie, you see her in a different light to the second half of the movie
Definitely.
as it evolves, and you just because obviously her scene in bed with Bond, and then she's in bed with Reynard, and even the cold like you can't feel me, like, and that's quite. He's infatuated by her, but I don't think she's infatuated by anyone.
Yeah, that's it. Wow. Amazing that he's more into her, which is crazy.
He's doing it all for her. He's doing it all for her. Yeah. Even at the end when he's like, "Here's the world, like, have fun with it."
Yeah,
but I think she sees these people as playthings.
Is there anything in the earlier script, Tom, that goes more into her character and her motivation?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it changes by the end. In that third draft, I'm trying to remember the lines in the actual film, and I don't think it is. But correct me if I'm wrong, because I must admit it's been at least 2 months since I watched that film. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's when things start falling in my head. So somebody who's seen it more recently, correct me. But in the third draft, when Bond, well, I was going to say when she's interrogating Bond, but actually, as the script makes clear, Bond's interrogating her, actually, even though he's the one in the torture chair. And he starts asking her, so why are you doing this? And says, so you killed your father. And she's, he killed me the day he refused to pay the ransom. And I can't remember if that line's in the film now, but I feel it still is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And then again, she starts talking about the family connection with the oil. Now, again, that's something that's from memory, and I will double check this now while we're having the discussion. From memory, it's a little more prominent in the earlier drafts that she believes that her father wrongly or did somehow through some chicanery inherited this oil empire from her side of the family that she believes.
She does mention that it's I think she mentions it's from her mom. He got it from her mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of rooted as more her primary motivation in those early drafts. And I'm kind of pleased that it's left a bit more ambiguous. I think in the actual film, like, is it, as you say, was it always that? Did she care about that until the kidnapping? Is that just something that she can point to make herself feel better and make it feel like she's justified doing this, rather than just being straight up revenge for what she feels as a betrayal from her father and from MI6 and that sort of thing? And I think she's a very, like I say, she's a very fascinating character. And as I say, in the earlier drafts, to me, is a bit more like one-dimensional villainy, not quite take over the world thing, but she had a defined goal, which I guess she does in the actual film, but the motivations are a bit more grey, which I really like. I think that's an improvement.
There's so much ambiguity, isn't there?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The scene where the skiing scene, where they're trapped in the ice.
Oh my God!
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
I can't stay here.
You're not going to. You're not going to. Electra.
I can't breathe.
Electra, look at me. Look at me. Look at my eyes. Look at my eyes. Look at my eyes. You're all right. Everything's all right. Trust me.
Obviously, that wasn't staged, but is she overdoing it to get Bond's side? You got
it. His sympathy.
Yeah.
But see, this is when I think no, though. Like, I think I would look if there was any like character from the films. I would love to, read a book of their backstory or have a prequel. Part of me would say it's Electra because I think, and I've spoken about her character specifically so many times because I think there's so much going on there, and you could assume so much. There's so many different, directions, you could take with her, and I think part of that is just Sophie Marceau's performance anyway, because you need someone to fall in love with to then go, oh, actually, she needs to go. Like she's actually just terrible. But I think as a character, I think you can make assumptions that, the daughter of a rich father who, got lucky partially perhaps with who he married into, took over, this massive company, potentially neglected her, maybe years of resentment that culminate in a kidnapping where he doesn't protect her, which for one could flip her over the edge. And I think, and I've said that I think she's a sociopath. I think she doesn't understand and doesn't fully know how to interact with people. It seems like she's, analyzed what people should be doing. She needs to be a humanitarian. She needs to give to charity. She needs to, play the, grieving daughter while still powering forward. And I think there's so much performance in what she does that there's no real person in there. And the only real parts of her come out when she's in times of stress, when she actually feels like she's in trouble. And that's why I feel like when the avalanche happens, it might bring her back to being kidnapped, where that was probably the most vulnerable point in her life, where she ultimately decided to make a decision. And that's when I'm like, I do feel a bit bad for her because she shouldn't have been kidnapped. That shouldn't have happened, whatever. But she reacted as she did. And I think, over most of any of the, women in Bond, she's got a story that makes me go, I love her, but I hate her so much for what she's planning to do. And ultimately, she wants control. She really wants to have control over everything. And then again, that may be another result of a kidnapping where she had no control. She really is trying to turn everything around. I just think it's one of the most interesting characters you could have in Bond. And I think, again, Marceau's performance is excellent, excellent. So I feel like it's kind of crazy when she's not, involved in any of the conversations of, some of the greatest, Bond villains or any of the women in Bond, because really she should be, at the top of both of those lists, really. And it just makes for such a much more interesting film, to have a character like that. And we've not really had anything like that since, which, I think we've, Tom, I think we've discussed before about, imagine if we had another, female villain who was a massive bitch. You really want like you want a Joan Collins dynasty version, Bond villain. And I think, exactly, yeah. But Sophie Marceau does a great job with Electra, and I think we need some more like that.
You mentioned control there. I think that's interesting. I was just thinking because, like we say, World Is Not Enough and Electra, there's just endless chat about it. So the casino scene's interesting, isn't it? Where is that Valentin Zukovsky must know her. She must come in there a bit. And even this, she's like, he notices the change in her, because he welcomes her quite well. And then the whole, well, what are you doing? Just living recklessly like this.
One card, hydro, $1 million.
Wait. Bury the top 3 cards.
You're determined to protect me, aren't you?
Perhaps from yourself. You don't have to do this.
There's no point in living if you can't feel alive.
And then the catchphrase comes out. Is that hers, do you think, rather than Renard's? Do you think she's started this reckless behavior? I don't know.
I kind of think so. I think he's taken it from her. Really, it feels more right for her.
Shall we?
Electra, this is a game I can't afford to play.
I know.
But I mean, Renard as well. I mean, he's only got limited life at this point, so I mean, why not? I think they're a good match, but clearly, as already been said, he's fallen for her, she's not fallen for him.
So when it talks about like Stockholm syndrome, when do you not think she does have that then? I mean, it's such a fascinating thing, isn't it?
I don't think she does. I think she knows she can play it off as that. If anything came to pass, she can play it off. I feel like she's got an answer for everything.
It's called Stockholm syndrome.
Common in kidnappings. Young, impressionable victim. Sheltered. Sexually inexperienced. A powerful kidnapper. Skilled in torture, manipulation. Something snaps in the victim's mind. The captive falls in love with her captor.
How dare you? How dare you? That animal, that monster? He disgusts me. You disgust me.
That's why Bond kills her, and he's in the end he accepts that he will have to kill her. I think.
Yeah,
he knows she's not just damaged; she is actually pretty evil almost by the end.
Yeah, and she's probably got a very powerful force behind her. I mean, I just think of in the beginning where she's on like OK magazine and stuff like that. She's a celebrity, and she's probably she's probably very well liked in the general in the general worldview. So it makes sense that she feels confident because there's probably loads of people who would back her no matter what.
I think it's quite ballsy to have a female villain who's so strong, who uses her sexualization, sexuality, but isn't like overtly sexualized. Like, so it's not a Zen you're on a top character where we're just, orgasming over suffocating people. I think if there was a female villain to be done now, the temptation would be go down to the actual use the physical aspect of it, as opposed to the actual using her sexuality for evil in that way, and the actual mind control and manipulation. I mean, that's an incredibly progressive, forward-thinking way to do a female character. I really do.
Because I believe that she feels like Bond would never kill her, and she can get away with.
Yeah.
She slept with him. No matter what she does, he's not going to kill her.
No.
And then Bond has to prove her wrong.
You wouldn't kill me. You'd miss me.
Yes.
Dive, Bond!
I never miss.
This Bond, this is why we love him so much. The country, the mission, will always come above the personal. And he clearly is affected by her. And he wants to try and complete the mission without having to kill her, definitely. The whole, she's ready for you or whatever it is, with Renard at the end. Even that it's all going back to her. But he still has to get rid of him.
She's waiting for you!
Totally agree with everything that's been said. I think she is certainly one of the best female characters the series has ever had, and I think the performance that's given is hard to touch. It's like she like you said, she has a sort of vulnerability, but then also a hardness. She's such a much more. I don't know. There's a tendency for when, particularly when men are writing female characters, is they're just not very good at it. And I think that basically the best way of doing it is to write that as a male character and just cast a woman. And I think that there are certain themes where what makes it good is that she's not afraid to use, like say, her sexuality. She's not afraid to use her vulnerability to manipulate as many people as she possibly can. But that is also not seen as a weakness or as some sort of failing. Because obviously the circumstances of her, the plot is such a traumatic experience that this is all based on everything that she went through and the betrayal, and how could she possibly trust anyone beyond, once she was out. So I think that as a female character, it's really well written, and I think the acting is just. What's really good about it, I think, is is how she sort of plays off Bond, because obviously when you're writing Bond, there's a sort of knowingness, he is that character, and so you sort of do have to write those scenes where he tries to seduce people, and there's a little wink and a nod sort of thing. And I think that they use her to sort of bring him out of that. I think that to sort of he is kind of pushed and he's confronted. Now, obviously, it ultimately ends in that one scene where he murders a woman, and I think that's still quite a shocking scene, actually, because you are thinking he's not going to do it, and then that's it. possibly the best sort of female character in the series because not only because, like I say, the character, but also how she interacts with all the other characters. Because it's like I say, it's great having strong female characters, but if they're sort of just they have no impact on the plot, then it's just a good character. But she actually drives the whole of the plot. She is the center of the story, offers up surprises, offers up, even the people that feel that they know her don't actually know her.
Yeah.
And I think that's just makes it much more complex and much more interesting. And I think, again, that's what I really like about this film is that it really does take Bond into sort of out of his comfort zone, not only in terms of some of the stuff that he does, but as a character. And it's great to see that obviously Brosnan was completely capable of doing that, and she is a great actor. And he is completely, toe to toe with her, and I think that's what also makes it a really rewarding watch as well.
She also manipulates M, of course, and there's a personal link with them because of the Sir Robert King. There's so much going on, isn't there?
Sir Robert King, James Bond.
Ah, the man who retrieved my money. I can't thank you enough. Excellent work. Be careful, Em. I might try to steal him from you.
Construction's not exactly my speciality.
Quite the opposite, in fact.
Best of the family.
Old friend.
We read law at Oxford together. I always knew he'd conquer the world.
And then you think, is King just a nice guy with an awful daughter, or what? Was he actually not a good father to her? So this, again, Sam, we need the backstory, we need the film, we need the prequel.
I need to do some creative writing and just make a story. I don't know, I
Chris
think it'd be so interesting. Yeah,
I do think it would, because it's so complicated, that opening bit with the pin, and I don't understand it and all this and stuff. I don't care. I don't care anymore. We've done that. But I am interested in the sort of the different relationships, as Chris said. Everyone she's on screen with, I'm fascinated with, and we can come to Renard now, because I think sometimes people don't remember, they never sort of name Electra on the best villains list because they think, oh, well, Renard was meant to be the main villain and he wasn't, and I don't like that. And then Denise Richards suffers. Oh, Electra King was meant to be the main Bond girl, but then she wasn't. So both of them, but you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
You need, for Electra to work, you have to have Renard as not being the big bad wolf at the end of it. And she's actually revealed to be the real brains and the real, power of the story. So the complaint normally with Renard, of course, is he's built up so much that he can never live up to it. And he doesn't actually do much. He doesn't cause much harm to Bond. He's not actually that tough. But again, that's kind of the point, isn't it? It's misdirection deliberately, I'm assuming the script, partly, to get you to think, whoa. And you've got this, you know about that, John. You know the head, the unnecessary CGI see-through hologram thing of Renard's head.
My mate, who he plays bass in my church band. His dad provided the projectors to actually project onto the screen that image. So his dad had to go down to Pinewood and set them up so that projector can go on the screen of Renard's head. I mean, it's such a tenuous link, but it's like, how ridiculous is that, and how good is it?
That's a great M scene, isn't it? Really. I mean, I love the Scottish castle and all that.
Yeah.
Mixing the old with the new technology is brilliant.
It's moving through the medulla oblongata, killing off his senses. Touch, smell, he feels no pain. He can push himself harder, longer than any normal man. The bullet will kill him, but he'll grow stronger every day until the day he dies.
Renard.
I think he's very interesting overall, particularly because, as you say, this is, I guess, kind of still the only time, but certainly the first time that there was such a big misdirect as this, as who was going to be the true villain of the film. I think it's. I know some people talk about, and I think it's a very valid point, is one of the reasons why some people may see Christmas Jones as being a little underdeveloped is because the film simply can't devote enough time to her over Electra because she's such an important part of the film. I think for that small reason, maybe that's why Renard may feel a little underdeveloped because he is kind of just a cipher. He's just there as I know that you said like some people still complain about it. I feel like if they made him this incredibly interesting and overall fantastic villain, when there's the rug pull, people are like, oh, we kind of like this guy. He's just, but I think he's a very fascinating character overall. I think there's certain elements in the final draft script that I would have preferred to see in the final film. Just little touches, like he's often seen like just in the background a bit, and I think that makes him seem a bit more interesting. Like for example, there's a really what I would have really liked to have seen. It's just like one of those things when you read the script, you can visualize it in your mind. At the funeral, at Robert King's funeral, right, very early in the film, there's a moment when they're all walking out with an Electra's there, and Bond's there, and that's in the film. But there's a brief moment where it says Bond sort of looks around and he sees just like this shadowy figure standing on top of a hill, just watching everything going on. And he turns to like it's either Emma Robinson he's with when they're walking along. I think it's Robertson to point him out. When he turns back, there's nobody there. And there's a couple of little moments like that throughout the film where it implies like Renard's watching what's happening like from a distance. Yeah, it makes him seem
is across the road, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, they did film that bit in the introduction where he's literally watching Bond in Bilbao.
What's his name? Our friend from MI6.
James Bond.
When the time comes, I trust you won't let me down. Until then, let us toast this James Bond. You're in his hands now.
They did cut that out, and I mean, in a way, because I put that back in, and I'm kind of pleased they cut that. It does slow that bit down, and I like him being revealed in the Devil's Breath scene because all the bits beforehand, he's just like a shadowy figure.
Welcome to the Devil's Breath. For thousands of years, Hindu pilgrims have journeyed to this holy place to witness the wonder of the miracle of the natural flames that never die.
I say there's the bit at the funeral. I'm sure there's at least one other moment where it says Bond like sees somebody and you don't really see who it is. I think that could have been really effective to make him seem like more of a presence, because I do think he's kind of not totally in the background, but a little in the background. And I guess he kind of has to be because, as I say, this like the film has to devote a lot of time to Electra. Like it just there's no other way to do it. But I think for what he is and the time he gets, I think Robert Carlyle was very effective in it. And he really, I think it's a testament, I think, to his performance that he doesn't get a whole lot to do outside of like the final fight with Bond, but he's very memorable in what he does. He does very well. And as I say, I just wish there was that little bit more of sort of the creepy side of him. Because I think he is kind of a creepy villain anyway, but I think if we had to play a little bit more, I'd have really loved to have seen it.
He might have been cast on the back of Trainspotting, but he's a much scarier character than that, you could say. It's a totally different part, isn't it? I know John always says about they probably cast Christoph Waltz thinking that he was going to do his Inglourious Basterds sort of shtick. And he did a bit, but he didn't have the scripts to back it up. This is just a completely different character. This is, he's obviously from a different country, but he's got to do the romantic bits. And that scene where it's the big twist, isn't it? Where they sort of come running into each other's arms with Sophie Marceau. Because they almost look like an odd couple as well. And that, you could say, oh, I don't really buy that. But exactly, she's manipulating.
I think, so he, like you say, that he serves the purpose of the plot. And I also think it's quite interesting that he is kind of built up as this, character to be feared and who's, but ultimately, he is manipulated, and there are, telling scenes where, it reveals that he's impotent, and there's this sort of like, so therefore this sort of building up as this sort of like really scary character is actually fairly pathetic and quite a sad character who is basically dying, and is being sort of almost being driven mad by this bullet in the brain that's going, and I think that sort of makes him more interesting. And it's sort of that double edge of, you create such an interesting character, you want the payoff. But actually what makes it interesting is that he isn't as interesting as he is built up to be. And because again, there is that misdirection of actually, we want to be, it's Electra who's the main point here. But I always really liked him. I really always liked his performance. And I think every time I go back, I sort of do feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
Hot takes.
I'm with you, Chris. I'm with you. I think.
Yeah.
I think for a guy who is built up to say he can feel no pain or whatever, that guy is in emotional agony by the end of the film. Like when he hears that Electra dies, and that last look where he looks up, where just before when Bond says she's waiting for you, he looks like a little boy. He looks he is completely emotionally gone. And I think that the whole thing is he can't feel pain. No, he flipping can.
Yes, good.
He can't feel physical pain, but he is so emotionally just done by Electra. And I know, I don't think he can be any other way. I think that is how this character has to be written to platform Electra and to sell the story well. So he might not come very high in people's rankings of villains, but in terms of effectiveness and service to the plot, he's exactly what it needs to be.
We've perhaps commented, Tom, and maybe when it came out, and since that, like Robert Carlyle, a bit of a strange, he's quite small and everything, and so would it, you kind of thinking throughout, well, it might have been better if they'd cast someone who's more physically imposing and everything, but more important, given what's just been discussed and everything, is he's a very good actor, and he can portray those things. And maybe if he was, bigger and everything like that, you might lose a bit of that, maybe, lose a bit of that, the way that he is completely devoted to Electra. And, I think it's a brilliant portrayal of unrequited love right before your eyes, And I think this is something that we discussed on when we reviewed it, but the similarities with The Dark Knight Rises. And I think in a lot of ways, this does it better. I absolutely love that film, of course. I'm absolutely obsessed. But I think this does it a bit better. So you've got a villain who feels no pain, who you think is the sort of main villain all the way through. But then it turns out there's a female villain who they have some sort of love for, who is actually pulling the strings and everything. And I do think that's quite an interesting thing. The sort of comparisons. I don't often see those made very often, but I think they do it brilliantly. And again, we've spoken about Electra and how good she is and how the portrayal is. But yeah, just as Pierce Brosnan is brilliant against her, so is Robert Carlyle. And I think just during the course of this evening, I'm appreciating all this more and more. It really is. It's still, we've not really seen much more of this kind of thing. Just on Renard as well, something we did mention was another similarity with Skyfall is, Cigar Girl, a bit like Severine does, says, you can't protect me against him. He is like some terrible, terrible person who will exact revenge or whatever. And, I think in that case, it's different because Silver is that terrifying threat. He is, whereas Renard, as we've just been discussing, it's not him real. He is obviously an awful man and a terrorist and everything, but at this point, he's just at the beck and call of Electra. So yeah, I as I say, my appreciation for it is just increasing all the time, and particularly this aspect in Electra and everything. I think it's just really well done, really well cast. Actually, yeah, I think it's brilliant.
This is why we say it's so underrated. I'm sorry. The more you talk about it, the depth to it is astonishing, really. You can't have every Bond film like this.
No.
I know people complain that why have we not had a female villain since, which there is, of course, some mileage in that. But, I think, was it Tom who said it before? If we do have one, oh no, it was Sam, wasn't it? Yeah. If we do have one now, don't do it the sort of same thing where it's a love story as well. And let's just have a plain, old-fashioned villain that happens to be a woman. I think would be a better way of doing it.
Like an Irma Bunt.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Or Rosa Klebb.
Yeah. Well, they're a bit. These 1-2 villains, Grant and Klebb. He's in the shadows watching.
Yeah.
Protecting Bond for some reason,
So
Oh yeah, please.
Oh,
yeah.
What a woman!
Man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, she's got that French accent. She's called me Sean. I said, Sean. And then we did this scene. We all in Spain. We have to come down with a helicopter. This crazy helicopter. Because I'm so scared of freaking heights and flights and everything. So hop into the helicopter and flew up there. And then when you come out, Simon, the guy, first idea was like action. So when he landed, so we come in. He goes, okay, cut, do it again. And I told Sophie, don't do anything when you say action. Pretend we didn't. I started enjoying this helicopter ride. So go up and down. So come back down. Action, we can hear it. Action. And Sophie goes, let's go. I said, no, don't wait, let's wait. Actually goes, cut. Can't you hear? No, I can't hear. Do it again. So we did it 3 or 4 times. It's just me because I love the helicopter going up and down. And she was freaking out. I said, like, you're the biggest star here. Don't worry about it. Action. So they ended up putting a little radio in the thing so they can hear me. So we can hear him saying action because he thought we couldn't hear him, but I heard him. I just want to pretend we didn't hear him. So the helicopter kept going up and down, up and down. It's the funniest thing. And they gave us real guns as well. Man, that was crazy. You know, fired a gun. And when he went to Spain, I had the holster. It's so hot over there, man. I had the holster, and I was carrying it in the set, you know, this mountainous thing, and I took it off. So I put it on the side. Went to get a drink, and when I came back, the gun's gone. I was like, oh man, I started looking for it. The guy came up and goes, oh, you looking for this? Oh yeah, where'd you find it? He goes, I've been following you for 4 days. I didn't tell you that I work for the gun company because they're real guns. And you can't leave it there because the criminals will take it.
Wow.
Sorry, man, I'm not doing it.
Whoa.
Oh, he followed me. He knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because it was so hot and heavy.
The vast majority of your scenes are with Sophie Marceau, so you must have built up quite a good rapport with her over the acting and the filming period.
Would you love to know?
No, I wasn't implying anything. No.
Dirty wrestler you are. I just love the way people think, oh, you know, and you're seeing. That's like, yeah, good on ya. No, she was fantastic. She was a lovely lady. She was a good lady. Yeah, we talk, you know, she does ballet, and she what else she does? She asked me about weights and everything like that. She goes, oh yeah, man. She's training, you know, just training with weights. She's coming up and go, oh, he says, what do you do? You know, like she's got no idea about weights, but she does ballet. That's what she got her body.
Wow.
She'd be old now, wouldn't she?
Yeah, I mean, well, she's looking very good for her age, obviously, but I presume she must.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that.
She must be in her 50s now, mustn't she?
Yeah, she's very 50s? Very big.
Oh yeah,
she's in her 50s. Yeah,
she's older than that.
She's
older than that.
She might be 60, might she?
She's older, yeah.
Go on, Sam, have a look. Go on.
So
I will.
I'm 60. I'm 60 next year, so she'll be 65 or something.
Wow, amazing. Yeah.
She's still massive in French cinema.
56.
Oh, 50. Oh, so she's younger than you, John.
She's 56.
Yeah.
Is she 56?
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, I have to give her a call tomorrow. Wow,
yeah. Just tell us about, was it amazing seeing those scenes? Because obviously you're her bodyguard. You're in so much of the film with her, like there's the torture scene and things like that. There's the casino scene. There's just so many iconic moments.
The casino was crazy. We filmed that, I think, in one of the army or one of the army general in the British Army, his house. One of the scenes we did that in his house. I was like, I can't live here. Seriously, it was. That's why I love London, man. And it's got this massive estate, you know. And we filmed one of the scenes there, but the casino, I don't remember much. We did it somewhere. You walk in, you think you're in the casino.
Yeah.
But why they do that set was crazy. It was fantastic. Man. It was just, oh man.
What are you doing here?
The same thing you are. Looking for the people who tried to kill me.
Let me take you home. Now.
No. I want them to see I'm not frightened.
Miss King, how very nice to see you. We have kept your father's chair free.
Free? Nothing comes free from you, Sokovsky.
Your father had a credit line with us, $1 million US. I'd be happy to extend you that courtesy. So, what's it to be? 21? Blackjack, your father's favorite?
Let's keep it simple.
It was really good. It was like the best experience of my life. And I came here and I've done about like a few different films. And I'm sitting there and I was like, what the hell is this? Because I'm with sport, I went straight to the top instead of coming down and work yourself up. So I didn't realize, and I think back even now talking to you guys, I didn't realize, wow, that was an amazing journey for me.
Yeah.
Keep watching for part 3 of our 25th anniversary celebration of The World Is Not Enough. This time we move on to the original Scooby-Doo gang, featuring M, Tanner, Charles Robinson, R, and the final appearance of Desmond Llewellyn as Q. We finally get to talk about Dr. Christmas Jones. We also discuss The Allies, featuring the lovable Valentin Zulkovsky.